Hi, I'm Stu Kagan, and welcome to Born Scrappy, the podcast for scrap metal exporters and traders. Join me in conversation with some of the most experienced traders and operators that have helped shape this incredible industry. In today's episode, I chat to Beatriz Landa. Bea leads the scrap procurement and planning for Novelis North America. Novelis is an absolute aluminium giant, doing over 16 billion in sales and 2 billion in EBITDA annually. Bea holds one of the most influential roles in recycled aluminium in North America. Not only is she a big player in our industry, she also played professional soccer in Spain. She's an all-round overachiever. In today's episode, we speak about partnering for success, planned growth and opportunities, new sources of revenue, landfill mining, scrap champions, and so much more. Now let's hear from Bea. But first, intro. Hey Bea, how are you?
Hey Stu, doing good, you?
Yeah, awesome, thank you. Welcome to Born Scrappy Season 3.
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, and we're opening with you, so this is really exciting. We've been talking about it for a while and wanted to open Season 3 with you and Novelis, so excited to get going.
That's great. I'm excited to go through this conversation.
Yeah. So Bea, let's talk about, I guess, give us a bit of history as well, how you got into the industry. We like to kind of know the background of everybody. So what got you into recycling? What got you into melting in the metals space?
Yeah, it was very coincidental. So I was many moons ago, pro soccer player, lawyer in Spain, decided that wasn't my path, went to get an MBA in the States, ended up working for a strategy consulting company. And it was a lot of hours. And I started interviewing with companies, and Novelis had a really good story. And it was all about sustainability and leaving a better planet for our kids. And it immediately tugged on my heartstrings. And I basically decided I want to be part of that story and moved over to Novelis. That was 14 years ago.
Look, I want to hear more about the pro soccer player, but I don't know if all the listeners are going to want to go 40 minutes, 45 minutes talking about your professional background. But give me a quick 1 minute snippet on what were you doing?
So I played in Spain for one of the top 3 professional teams there for probably 10 years. Played regional teams. So basically started the more pro women's soccer in Spain. And probably, we were the World Cup winners. Played with Jenny Hermoso, who you probably know was the lady with the kiss. So it's been an exciting 10 years, and really seeing where it's come to right now is super. I cry when they became the world champions. So it's really exciting.
And it was in New Zealand and Australia, the last World
Yes.
Cup. So, I mean, I was there at the time. It was incredible to watch. So yeah, the female soccer level has become incredible. It's so great to watch. We absolutely love it. I actually went to go watch the 2010 Soccer World Cup where Spain won in South Africa, the men's World Cup final, Spain against Holland. So I was there in the game with a whole lot of clients from the metal recycling industry as well. So that was exciting. All right, that's football done. That's soccer done. Let's talk about metal recycling. So in Novelis's operation, for those that don't know, how much are we talking about recycled metal? And what sort of a role does recycled metal play in your business?
Yeah, and maybe just to give some stats so everybody understands the size of Novelis, because it's a pretty big company. So it's 16 billion in sales. We're about 2 billion in EBITDA. This is about 3,600 KT of coil being sold. And out of that, 63% is recycled content inputs, right? So we're talking about probably 2 million tons of input. And we are the largest recycler of UBCs in the world. So we recycle about 82 billion cans, which is one of the things I'm most proud of.
And you have quite a big geographical network. So where are you positioned at the moment globally?
Yeah, so we have 33 facilities spanning basically the world. We have a big concentration of, I think it's 17 right now, facilities in North America, predominantly the US. We have a very large plant in Brazil. In Europe, we're headquartered in Zurich, but we have plants in Switzerland, Germany, Italy, the UK. And then in Asia, we're headquartered in South Korea, but we have plants as well in China. So all over.
Yeah, and what's your specific role in the company?
Yeah. So I lead the scrap procurement and planning side for North America. So we're right now about 1,000 KT of scrap inputs, an additional to slab and prime and alloys and hardeners. And we've got a pretty big growth in the next 5 years with two plants, Guthrie, Kentucky, which is a auto casting plant, and we're ramping it up right now. And then we've got Bay Minette scheduled in a couple of years. So that'll be big.
A few months ago, I visited your new offices in Atlanta. They're like another level. Is that where are you basing those offices?
I'm based in those offices, and those have a reason. So we were in much crappier offices pre-pandemic, and nobody wanted to go back to the office. And this was we've got coffee machines and baristas and, sunlight and conference rooms and social areas. And everybody's like, oh, okay, right. We'll go back 2 days a week. So, but it's been great. Like people really enjoy it. And you miss that social interaction and really the way the office is laid out. It allows for that collaboration, the social interaction. And it's been really good in that sense and good to connect with people again.
Yeah, if I was working from home, I would rather choose to come to your offices, no question. We went for lunch around the corner or down in the center. It was fantastic. Yeah, I love it.
Did you have that cold nitrogen coffee brew, or you
didn't.
weren't brave enough?
No, I think nobody offered it to me. I'm brave. Come on, Bear.
That'll keep you awake for like 7 days. So
yeah,
be careful.
I like the challenge.
Nice.
I'm still on New Zealand time zone, so I don't know if I sleep or when I sleep, and it's all mixed up at the moment. Tell me a bit about the recycled metal that you're buying. What are the qualities that you're looking? What are the kind of commodities that you're buying, and why are they important to you?
Yeah, so one of the biggest buckets of scrap we buy is UBC, used beverage cans. Quality obviously is very important. The way it's packaged is important. I mean, going hand in hand with quality, the contamination, right? If it's very contaminated, it really messes up our operations. We need to bake the belt, the delacquer, the oven that really melts the paint and some of the contaminants out. If it has a lot of plastic, that gets stuck, and then you got to stop the line and basically take everything out and bake it. So there's a lot of unplanned downtime there. So that part's really important. We buy 3X shred, which is cleaned up old sheet taper. We buy some other kinds of inputs for our can product. Obviously, the can process scrap is part of it. And then we buy, that's more our can side. Then we buy for auto, we buy a lot of auto scrap. A lot of it from OEMs directly. We want that closed loop and that sustainability, and that's part of what we stand for. And then we have our continuous cast facilities, which take in a large spectrum of scrap, ranging from old sheet, painted siding, MLC, to some of our more pure types of scrap like litho or EC chops.
And do you have, because it's quite a big array of different metals you guys are purchasing, and for different facilities, I'm sure as well. Is every trader of yours, is each buyer buying all the commodities, or they kind of set up to buy each different commodity?
Yeah, no, we have specialized auto scrap buyers. And then within the non-auto, there's a UBC buyer specifically. There's one that is a little bit of everything, but it's for larger accounts, national accounts. And then we spread out by geographies. There's one person that's only does the class scrap. So it's a little bit of a hybrid, but we try to specialize where we can. And then, I mean, the US is so large, US and Canada, that it's geographical where we can't specialize.
Yeah. And are you guys handling shipping ever? Or is everything delivered directly to you? What does the ideal shipment look like to you? Are you guys doing payment on packing? Are you waiting for it to arrive at your facilities?
We do both. So I would probably guess about 50% is delivered and 50% we pick it up. So we have a pretty large logistics team and partner very closely with them to do all these pickups.
Okay, so how do you get new clients, or what happens if you're a metal recycler and you're looking to supply Novelis, and after listening to this, you're like, oh, hold on, this is probably a good end market for me to get into. What hoops do suppliers have to jump through, and how open are you to bringing on new suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, we're growing. So we're going to grow probably 60% in the next 5 years. So we are looking for new suppliers and new partners. I think there's a bunch of different ways, honestly, like reach out to me, to any of our buying team with what you're proposing and what you're offering. Where we've had the best success is when we have really partnered with our suppliers. So, you know, when we have a need and when our supplier understands our processes and they're able to give creative solutions, then that's where the best value is added from the supplier and from our side. And I'll give you an example. We developed the 3X shred market in the US. And that was basically UBC at the time had a super high price and we were looking for alternatives. We partnered with one of our suppliers and started looking at oat sheet, Tabor. How could we clean it up? And it took us probably a good year to clean it up and get it to the right level of chemistries. And then it was all about, how do you deliver it? Do we deliver it? We ended up delivering it in dump trucks, shred and dump trucks. And there's a warehouse next to our Berea facility that they store it in, and it's just in time shreds. And this has added a ton of value. It's probably the best example of how we've partnered with a supplier. And I think it's been a really good relationship on both sides.
How many suppliers do you have like that?
That
are making that 3X shred?
Oh, that we are making a 3X shred? A few.
Okay.
Quite a few.
Do you do any of it yourself? Do you have your own cleaning plants for shredded material?
We don't.
Okay. So everything you buy directly from source?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, not handling and not cleaning it yourself.
Yeah.
What issues do you come across when buying material? I mean, obviously quality is standard. Whatever, any melter is going to have that sort of issue that they come across. Is there anything else that, you know, metal recyclers should be aware of, what they should be trying to avoid and what they should minimize as much as possible when dealing with yourselves?
Yeah. I mean, I think the basics is your paperwork matches what you have in the truck. And I know we have a really bad reputation as being bullies, and part of it's deserved. We're trying to change that. We're trying to be much more supplier centric. But one of the issues was we kept getting trucks that had, 5 different things, and the paperwork said a completely different thing. And it wasn't what we needed. So we were, I think, very flexible initially, but at some point we ended up with a lot of stuff that we did not need and started rejecting and started asking for a little bit more discipline. And I know that did not sit very well with the suppliers, but there's that good reason for why we did it. So I think that's the basics. Paperwork matches what was purchased, matches what's in the truck.
It's not a lot to ask. I know it seems very simple, but it isn't. It should be the basics. It should be, and I just want to touch on one thing you said before you go into the others. You used the term bully. I actually had this conversation 2 days ago at Erie at the Great Lakes Convention or conference. And somebody was saying that one of the traders they sell to, and they don't really sell to them anymore because they found them too firm And when his example, and I prefer the word firm than bully, his example was, if there's a small weight discrepancy of a couple £100 or whatever, why do you even have to make that claim? And I was like, well, it's going to be both ways. As long as it's both ways, then this buyer is just trying to make sure that everything matches and it's legit and everything is kind of like above board. So I think the idea of you being a bully, and if it's because people aren't really supplying the material that they're meant to be supplying, I don't think that's necessarily being a bully. It's being firm, but it goes both ways.
Yeah, and thank you, I appreciate that. And I've had these conversations, and the suppliers were like, well, Bea, when we sell you guys, we don't know exactly what we're going to have. So at the end of the day, what we do is we fill the truck with a bunch of different things, the majority being what we agreed. And you guys have accepted this for the last 5 years. Why are you changing now? And it's kind of like, I got it. I understand. Let's take it up a notch and let's be a little bit more disciplined. And hey, look, we're all trying to do the best we can for our businesses. So,
yeah. Sorry, I jumped in. You were going to give us a few others about how the processes can help minimize these issues.
Yeah, the other one we've had lately quite a bit, and it led to a bunch of rejections, is the trucks were so loaded that we weren't able to unload them without, without scratching the truck or damaging the truck, which then we would be responsible for. So that's been the culprit of some of these rejections. So that's another one. Third is delivering. And we're very flexible. I think we're quite flexible with the time. So if it's the windows, I believe, in my view, pretty broad. I'm sure there's other views to this. But for example, when we have a contract and we're buying UBC and we're in the middle of February, which is usually the time we're really tight, and then this gets pushed out to May when everybody's doing great, it doesn't work, right? So, and I know in February, the market's really hot and probably somebody got a better price for that. But the consistency, the keeping your word and the trust happens. And we've been on the other sides too, because when we have reliability issues or our inventories are full and we don't have anywhere to put it, then we ask suppliers to stop selling us. And we try to minimize this. And this has been a constant fight internally because it's cash flow and inventory. And we're like, guys, our suppliers can't hold material. They don't have space. It's not fair. So what we're trying to do is we're cementing pads in our plants to allow us to hold a little bit more inventory and be more supplier centric. So I know it goes both ways, but delivering at least relatively on time what you say you're going to deliver is pretty important.
I want to just double click and delve into that a little bit more. So we're talking about, I want to be clear, are you talking about monthly agreements, so like an annual contract or a quarterly contract where they got to supply a certain volume per month, or are you even talking about a spot sale meant to come in the following month and it doesn't because the market moves?
It's usually more the contracts or the quarterly deals. The spot sales we can manage because we know there's some fluctuation there. So it's more the long-term agreements.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, right? So if it's the long-term agreement, you're saying on both sides, sometimes the supplier doesn't fulfill their entire order, and sometimes you can't actually even take their entire order. But surely, and I'm going to go both ways here, so nobody's to blame, but surely if you have an agreement for that volume, don't you still, if it was you guys, for example, if the material was meant to come in February and you couldn't take it and it came in March, do you still give them the price based on February supply?
We do that, yes.
Okay,
to my
so
knowledge.
Then it's really, I was going to say, yeah, don't worry, all the comments are going to come in. That's not what I'm joking. We'll block the comments for this one, don't worry. But it goes both ways, right? So when they're not supplying, they might decide, oh, the market's gone up, so I'm not going to supply you, or supply it in the following month. They still will get last month's price because that just is fair. Now, I used to do huge amount of long-term agreements into Korea. This is 10, 15 years ago, of huge volumes of copper, and that's exactly how it worked, right? You couldn't play with it. If you delivered short this month, well, your first bit of supply for the following month was, and you had to start playing catch up to try and get back into the market. So that's fair, and it's fair if it's happening both sides. What I always don't like to see is a bully in the industry. So where it's very one-sided, and that's why I wanted to just clarify earlier on that I don't think your explanation of a bully is, somebody who makes a fictitious claim because the market drops and they're holding the balance of the 10% last bit of payment, and they just take advantage of the market drop and they say sorry, and then make up a claim, and they're in control because they have the last money outstanding or whatever it might be. That to me is being a bully, because you have an unfair advantage in a negotiation. And it doesn't feel like that's what you were necessarily saying. So happy with that. Suppliers need to try and make sure that they keep to their orders. Whatever they're meant to be supplying in a month, they need to try and do the same way. You need to try and make sure you can take as much as possible. And you're looking to fix that at the moment by creating more space and more availability for what needs to come in. That's cool.
Yep.
So those are kind of the issues that you might have seen from some suppliers. What trends are you seeing in the recycled metals market at the moment? And are these going to have huge effects on your operations?
Yeah, I think from the demand side, what we're seeing is more demand. So more mills, ADI is coming in. We're going to have Bay Minette. There's a lot of debottlenecking. There's new casting centers being announced. So there's going to be more demand. I think we're concerned with Mexico has been exporter into the US, and we're a little bit concerned Mexico's, especially the UBC is going to Asia. I mean, China's been relaxing its legislation quite a bit, so it can now take UBC direct, basically. So we're concerned there's more domestic demand and there's more external demand that will tighten a lot the US market. On the supply side, I think what we're seeing is there's two things. So from the supply side, we're seeing two things. One is a consolidation of players, and also a growth that does not match the growth we're seeing on the demand side. So again, if we double click on the UBC front, we have a pretty stagnant 45 to 50% recycling rate for probably the last 20 years. And we just can't get past that. And even now, if you start looking at most of our recycled UBCs coming from our deposit states, and our deposit states, there's some states that have a 10-cent deposit and some have a 5-cent deposit. We're seeing a decrease in the recycling in the 5-cent deposit, because I think with all this inflation and how much the value of things, 5 cents isn't enticing enough for people to go and make that extra effort. So we need to really rethink things, or through technology, capture UBCs before they go to landfill in a different way. If not, it's already going to be a tight market, but it's going to make it a much tighter market.
What do some of the other parts of the world do that have a higher rate of recycling for cans? Because surely under 50% is poor, especially in American standards. They would be striving to do better. I hear a lot about recycling more cans, and obviously Jess does a lot from Scrap University and with the kids' books and trying to start it at a younger age, and hopefully that comes through in the future. What can we do better? What can everybody do better? And what are other places doing that are better?
Yeah, I mean, if you take Brazil, and that's the country that has 100% recycling, which is phenomenal. The value of the can allows people to be professional UBC collectors, right? So you're in Brazil having a beer at the beach, and as you tip your can up, somebody kind of pops up the corner, right? So they know, oh, it's almost empty, we're going to go pick it up, or collect it on the street, but it's the livelihood. I think we could almost take that. If you go to Oregon, where it's a 10-cent deposit, there are folks that can live off collecting UBCs. But for the rest of the US, it's extremely difficult, especially those states that don't have deposits. So I think that's very unique. And I think it's very similar to Mexico, where again, the cost of living is pretty cheap. And therefore, just the value of aluminum can give you that livelihood. If you take Europe, for example, which is probably a little bit similar to the US in terms of cost of living, there's a lot of government involvement, right? So there's now, I think, 4 or 5 different countries that are setting up deposit systems or extended producer responsibility systems. So they're putting a lot of responsibility on the producers of cans to pick up their trash. And I think that would be, this is a very controversial topic because the way that deposit systems in the US, especially if you take, for example, Oregon, it doesn't allow for some of the industry that is collecting UBC and selling it. It kind of monopolizes that, right? And that's where I think there's a lot of pushback on this. So is there a way, and this is, I spent probably the last 3 years, is there a way where we let everybody participate? Because there's no, I don't think, especially if I put my Novelis hat, there's no intent to take UBC away from anybody. We just want the UBC. Like, how do we divert it from landfill and have everybody be happy with the solution and make everybody win? Is there a way we can do that across different players? And there was a group that was started at REMA to do just this. How do we increase recycling rates? And then I think we just never aligned on what the scope and what the intent was. And it didn't lead to any fruition, but
it needs that economic incentive, but it has to make sense in the full circularity of the value chain. The money just can't come out of fresh air and just go, well, now we're going to pay for all these cans extra than the value is, unless you have government incentives actually backing it. And that's not so simple in a place like the US. There's a lot of red tape to get through to kind of get something like that pulled off. So I see that. But like you're saying, you just want the other 50% that's going to landfill. We just want that back in the market, right? For many reasons. But that's, I think, got to be the main focus. And if people can come together and try and work out how we achieve that, whether you are competitors or not, really, that's what we want. We want the material back in the market.
Correct. Yeah. And you can take a look at, like, where do you intercept this? Do you educate the consumer so they put it in the right bin? And, I think it was, maybe I'm misquoting the percentage, but I think 50% of, I think it was 80 actually, 80% of the UBCs that end up at landfill, the people making the choice do have a recycling bin they can put it in, that one was even more shocking to me. It's like, oh man, we're just so lazy,
If you don't know that the aluminum can be recycled, how do you know what can go in that recycle bin? Like, I get it when people are unsure with plastics. You can't tell me people still don't know that it can go in the recycling. Or is it just actually no one cares?
I think it's the latter. No one cares.
It's got to be, because everybody knows that it can be. Well, I would like to think everybody knows that it can be recycled. So it makes me think about technology, right? So the MRF lines, they're sorting. All the waste should be going through MRF lines. Therefore, there shouldn't actually be 50% if it's coming through the waste stream, shouldn't be going into landfill. So let's talk about technology. What are you excited about? What are you excited about that's coming out in the metal recycling and processing industry at the moment? What innovation, what technology?
Yeah, I mean, sortation's the hot topic right now. And I think the vision systems, the optical sortation, where we're detecting exactly what's going through the lines, is advancing tremendously. And then the way, either through robots or jet nozzles or different ways to actually separate it physically, I think that's coordinating very well with the vision systems as well. So I think we've seen a lot of progress the last couple of years. And I think what we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 will maybe allow us even to think about, and I know it sounds really ridiculous right now, but even think about landfill mining and similar ideas where, again, if you think about 45% recycling rate for the last 20 years, we got a lot of UBC in our landfills today.
Yeah,
and
exactly
that would be ideal.
It's got to be cost effective, right? And that's what it's going to come down to. It's not going to be, a charity's not going to start mining landfills, but there's value there. There's no doubt, and that's just starting to talk about just the cans. That's before you think about anything else that has been tipped there over the last 20, 30 years. There is huge value in those landfills, and it's going to come around, who's going to see that value, who's going to come up with the best facility or the best operation to be able to mine that. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting space to watch for sure.
Yep.
Bea, what if somebody is already doing business with you or on and off on the spot market? What can they do to become a better long-term supplier of yours? I know there's obviously things like do what we've spoken about earlier. Make sure that what's in the paperwork is the correct amount or correct what you're actually packing. But what sort of advice do you have for metal recyclers that want to build a long-term plan with you or long-term partnership with you, or, you know, have long-term agreements with you, but are currently just on the spot side of things?
Yeah, I think the best success we've had with suppliers usually have been the ones we sit down with. They understand our process. They understand where we're going for the next 5 years. And we co-create solutions together to fit the new needs, right? So right now, one of the things that's really big on our agenda is twitch sortation, right? We're seeing a market that's going to be tight, and we see quite a bit of Zorba being exported out. Is there a way for us to upscale the Zorba into twitch and then into cast raw products, divide the raw products into the different buckets and consume that? And the technologies, I think it's very close. And if we can partner to not only be the end consumer and very specify very clearly our needs, but we have a lot of technological resources and a lot of multi-metal margin experts and a lot of expertise across the board, and partner with that know-how as well, I think we'll all be better. We'll create a new scrap stream, new source of revenue for our suppliers, and we'll get our needs filled. So that's the latest example. But kind of taking a step back to answer your questions too, it's sitting down with us, understanding the process, understanding where we're going, and then partnering to be able to really fill those needs together.
And I think it comes down to partnerships or collaboration, right? Those words are what's absolutely key. If you're in a partnership with your buyer, with the end user, whoever it might be, or you guys with your supplier, you work together to get to places. And when it's just spot transactions, you're not necessarily looking to achieve the same outcomes. It's very transactional that. Whereas if you consider it a partnership, immediately it changes the whole way that you look at it. And I like what you say. It's about sitting down together. We used to do it often in my previous company, sit with the buyers, make sure that we are aligned so we know what you're looking for, you know what we're looking for in this partnership, and then you can actually get somewhere. If it's purely transactional and every single trade you're trying to get every cent and push every single cent for every single pound, that's not going to be necessarily the best outcome in the long term. So yeah, engage, I would say. Yeah, that's absolutely key.
100%. And I think that the relationships, the long-term relationships, and we're all about long-term relationships, the ones we've had, it allows you to navigate the ups and downs, because there's always going to be ups and downs. And especially the downs, it's like, okay, there's a claim, or we can't agree to a price. We think you're being greedy. We think you're not being, you're not giving tit for tat. The history you've had allows you to get over those. And the breaking breads and the I scratch your back there and I scratch your back here, and we're in this for the long term. Let's figure this out. I think that history is super important for you to get through those downs.
Yeah, it's relationship industry, right? And what you're talking about there is building those relationships with each other, and that'll help you get through the ups and downs. Let's talk about ups and downs, though. When the market's fluctuating, as they have been drastically over the last while, and prices are up and down, do you guys, of course, you need a certain amount of volume, but let's maybe just relate this to the spot market more than it is for your agreements. Do you leave the market when the price is down? Do you buy more when it's down? Are you coming into the market aggressively at any time, depending on prices? Are you monitoring that on a monthly basis? Or is it you have a set amount that you need to buy? Doesn't matter what the price is going to be. That's what you're buying at.
Yeah, what we do is, we're a manufacturing company. So at the end of the day, like, we need to serve our customers. We need to get X amount of coils out the door. So it's not like we stop and start our equipment. And we have probably, I guess, we've got probably 50% of our needs in contract and 50% spot. Our contracts, we, again, unless there's really weird conditions, we honor them. Markets up or down, it doesn't matter. And then the 50% remaining, what we try to do is we try to optimize the cost of our ingots. So we can blend scrap a little bit differently. And if there's alternative scraps that when you calculate your price plus your recovery, because depending on the contamination of your scrap, you'll have a better recovery or worse recovery. That is then put into basically a chemistry calculator that allows us to optimize based on cost, having to optimize for the right chemistry. So there might be some fluctuations in how much volume we buy of one scrap or the other, but overall, the net amount is going to be, as if we have no reliability issues, it will be the same for the most part.
So let's just talk back to the metal recyclers for a second. When they are looking to supply you, say, for example, somebody hasn't supplied you before, where would you think they should be starting, and where should they add more value to maximize, I guess, the opportunity to trade with you? So, of course, your UBCs are probably where you're really super strong and probably the best in the world. Are there any other commodities, or what could they do better to make sure that they get full value of trading with Novelis?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's UBC is a big one. Painted siding is another one that's always a hot topic. Auto scrap, that one's a little bit tricky because we usually go direct for most of that. So that one's hard. It's more, can I be part of the supply chain? So the way the OEMs spit out the scrap and the way we consume it in our plants, usually there's a step or two in the middle. Call it baling, some densification. For our plant in Oswego, there's a tier 1 qualification to make sure it doesn't have any moisture. For our new plants, that doesn't exist. Or what we're doing now is we're doing sortation with mixed scrap. So can you participate in those 1 or 2 steps within the supply chain? That's an option. And then really, I mean, again, we're growing so much that we're looking to just get more scrap. So if reach out to us, tell us what you have, and we'll probably fit you in. Right now, we're growing the auto scrap. Probably in 2 years, we'll grow all the other kinds of scrap. So there's plenty of opportunity to get to know each other in the meantime.
Yeah, it's good to get started early. When you do keep growing, at least then you already have a partnership. Is there one thing you wish these metal processors knew about your business?
I think the first one is the growth, because again, we're looking for new partners and new suppliers, and we're trying to create these new forms of scrap or new scrap streams that don't exist today. So that's one. I think the second one is, there's things are interpreted different ways in the market. And again, if we don't buy scrap at a certain time because of inventory, and I'm not saying this is right, then that's why we're building the cement pads to be more supplier centric. But I think the more you understand what we're trying to get at and the ways we do business, I think the more you'll understand some of the limitations or some of the asks we're putting on some of our suppliers. And I think the perception or the ease of doing business will be easier. It's not easy to do business at Novelis. And just maybe my little marketing plug here, there's a lot of things we're doing. We've cleaned up our payment systems. We've tried to improve the way you schedule loads into our plants to make it a lot easier. We're trying to clean up the communication between the status of where the loads are and our suppliers. We're trying to be a little bit more flexible and ask the plants to raise the level of contamination or decrease to some extent a little bit of the quality standards so we can accept more. We've put what we call scrap champions at each of our plants. So these are the folks that are operators but they work for the metal team. So when a load's going to be rejected, we send the scrap champion out to say, make sure it's not just the 2 plastic bottles on the top, like make sure it truly is a rejection. And I think that's done wonders so far. I mean, we've gone from 17 rejections a month in one of our camp plans to 6. So there's a lot of things we're trying to do to be more supplier centric. And I hope that's noticed and valued. And again, we're still the big fish, and big fish in this industry, probably not big at all in the world, but we're trying to accommodate for working with very different size companies that maybe don't have the benefit of holding on to scrap or being a little bit tighter with what they provide in their paperwork in the truck or things like that. So that's my plan.
Those scrap champions must have changed the game, not just on the stat that you just told me, but I'm just thinking now the amount of time when I used to be a buyer for the large metal recycling company, I would buy and it would arrive, and the operations team, who are not on the customer side at all, would see, as you said, 1 plastic bottle on the top and go, reject the whole load. So having somebody who's actually representing you and the customer on the floor is an incredible idea. And I think they'll have a huge impact on your customer relationship, the partnerships that you have, as well as the life for the buyers in your team that are having to deal with this on a daily basis.
Agree. Yep. That was just implemented. So we'll see. I'll tell you in a year.
Season 4.
How much has it? Yes, exactly. Season 4. There you go.
Awesome. Bear, this has been awesome. I love that we put this together. This is a great way to start the season. I think there's huge amount of gold here for anybody that's looking to start a relationship with you guys. So I'm sure people will be reaching out to you soon. But before we go, I want to just end with getting to know you personally a little bit more. We know that you play professional soccer. Now we're going to find out, what's your favorite TV series or movie?
I'm one of the classics. I like Friends. I put it on the plane, laugh out loud. It's a feel good one.
On the plane, I was going to say the exact same thing. The amount I'm traveling, Friends, I've watched every one on the plane 5 times. Love it. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Or plane. Favorite place to visit?
I like to go home. Madrid is the big one. But if not, if it's one of these more exotic visits, I love Thailand. I'm a scuba diver, and Thailand's amazing.
Where in particular in Thailand do you like to go? The islands, or are you on Phuket in the main area? Or
Koh Phi Phi is one of my favorites.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Love Phi Phi. Yeah, very cool. Have you got a favorite book?
My favorite book, it's a little bit spiritual, but it's The Untethered Soul. Have you read it?
I haven't. No.
It's a deeper one. It's not a plain book.
I'm pretty sure if it's deep, I'm pretty sure Lisa's read it. She'll be editing this and she'll be like, of course I've read it, Stuart. I've told you about it 10 times. So sorry, Lisa, that I didn't listen well enough. Do you have a favorite quote? Everybody in our industry loves to throw quotes around. Have you got a favorite one?
I do have a favorite quote. I'm going to, it's a little bit long.
You can read it.
The Man in the Arena. Have you heard about this one?
Have Roosevelt? I heard it? My favorite quote.
There you go.
Are you going to read it? Please read it. I want to end this with you reading it. I absolutely love it.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of triumph or high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
On that note, with some goosebumps to leave with, that's unbelievable. Thank you so much, Bear. Had a great time in this episode.
Thank you, Stu. Really lovely conversation.
Cheers, Bear. Bye.
Bye-bye.